What if you stopped producing mucus today? Your lungs would weld themselves shut within the first hour. Every membrane in your body depends on a thin layer of slime to function. Without it, biology becomes a series of friction-based disasters. The drying begins immediately. Air hits your eyeballs. Without a tear film, the corneas dry out in seconds. Everything looks like a smeared watercolor painting. Your throat transforms into coarse sandpaper. Every breath feels like inhaling a handful of dry needles. The nasal passages crack. Blood begins to seep through the fissures. It is an uncomfortable sensation. Most people would reach for a humidifier, but the problem is internal. The lubrication is gone for good. Inside the lungs, the situation is catastrophic. Tiny hairs called cilia usually push mucus and dust upward. Now the conveyor belt stops. Dust, pollen, and urban smog settle permanently into the alveoli. Surface tension changes. Without the surfactant layer, the moist walls of the lungs touch and stick. They do not just touch, they bond. Every exhale pulls the tissues tighter. Every inhale fights a losing battle against adhesive biology. The lungs essentially shrink-wrap themselves. Oxygen exchange drops. Carbon dioxide builds up in the blood. This creates a state of acidosis. The brain begins to fog. Breathing becomes a conscious, agonizing effort to peel your organs apart from the inside. You might think drinking water helps. It does not. Water cannot replace the complex proteins and lipids of mucin. The water simply sits on top of the dry membranes. It is like trying to lubricate a rusted engine by throwing a bucket of rain on it. Attention shifts to the stomach. The gastric lining is a fortress of thick mucus. It keeps the stomach from digesting itself. Without this shield, the hydrochloric acid makes direct contact with the stomach wall. The acid begins to eat the tissue. This is not a slow process. It is an active chemical burn. The lining dissolves. The acid leaks into the abdominal cavity. Peritonitis sets in. The surrounding organs are now bathing in a cocktail of digestive juices and blood. The pain is blinding. The body attempts to trigger a vomit reflex, but the esophagus is also dry. The act of vomiting becomes a mechanical shredding event. The throat tissues tear like old parchment. Internal bleeding accelerates. The stomach is now a hole. The digestive system has effectively committed suicide by omission. The biological infrastructure is failing. The immune system is the next to fail. Mucus acts as a flypaper trap for pathogens. Every breath usually catches thousands of bacteria. Now the door is wide open. Every airborne microbe has a direct flight to the bloodstream. The lungs are already scarred and bleeding, providing a perfect breeding ground for infection. Sepsis begins to ripple through the circulatory system. The kidneys struggle to filter the sudden influx of necrotic tissue and bacterial toxins. Blood pressure plummets. The heart beats faster to compensate, but the blood is thickening. The lack of lubrication extends to the joints. Synovial fluid is a cousin to mucus. Movement becomes a grinding affair. Every joint click sounds like a dry twig snapping. The skin loses its elasticity. It becomes brittle and translucent. Tiny cracks appear across the knuckles and elbows. The body is no longer a living organism. It is becoming a piece of cured leather. The biological machinery is seizing up. Systemic collapse is now inevitable. The brain is the final holdout. Cerebrospinal fluid provides some cushioning, but the neural pathways are experiencing unprecedented friction. Cognitive functions degrade. Thoughts become fragmented. The body is now a desiccated shell. Internally, the organs have fused into a single dry mass of protein and salt. The lungs are a shriveled knot. The stomach is a cauterized crater. The bloodstream is a sludge of dead cells and clotting agents. This is the point of no return. External heat accelerates the process. The remaining moisture evaporates through the cracked skin. The stickman is now a human raisin. The transition from biological entity to biological sculpture is complete. Gravity becomes the primary enemy. The brittle bones, no longer supported by hydrated tissues, begin to hairline fracture under the weight of the torso. A simple sneeze, if it were possible, would shatter the rib cage like a porcelain vase. The internal architecture has shifted from flexible to crystalline. The body has reached a state of maximum dryness. Every cell is a shrunken husk. The biological experiment concludes with a quiet, dry thud. There is no blood left to spill. There is only dust. Death occurs not from a single failure, but from 1,000 microscopic frictions. The heart finally stops because the pericardium has adhered to the chest wall. The muscle cannot beat, it is physically stuck. The result is a perfectly preserved, naturally mummified corpse. The body is essentially a salt-cured statue of a person who forgot how to be slimy. It is a clinical, dry, and remarkably efficient way to cease existing. The biological machine has simply run out of oil. The medical examiner lists the cause of death as systemic desiccation. However, the insurance company refuses the payout. They argue that the lack of mucus constitutes a pre-existing condition and a failure to maintain the body's basic lubrication standards. The claim is denied for negligence. That is why slime is important. Do not stop making it. Subscribe to the What If Club for more ways to accidentally destroy your physical form through basic physics.